to talk about this really interesting initiative out of New York City. Over the weekend, Eric Adams, mayor of New York, announced that the city was going to spend $1.6 million inserting panic buttons into bodegas. Now, it isn't a secret that bodegas have been unfortunately ravaged with crime and burglaries, and therefore have been calling the cops a lot. These panic buttons would apparently, you press it and it goes directly to the NYPD. And that all sounds great. Couple things though. First of all, how are they over $3,000 a piece? I don't know exactly how that works, but that price seems high, especially if you divide that by the 1.6 million. But that's not the big problem. The big problem that I have with this is, while it is a step in the right direction, what happens when nobody gets prosecuted? For those of you who aren't familiar, and I can't imagine there's a lot of you that aren't, New York City is home to the Manhattan District Attorney named Alvin Bragg. And if you're not familiar with Alvin Bragg's work, he's the one that brought all the bunch of nonsense crap about President Trump and also doesn't prosecute crime. He's the guy that has said, well, petty theft is a crime of poverty, and prosecuting these poor individuals doesn't make anyone safer. In other words, the panic buttons, while I believe could be a good idea, don't make a difference if you don't freaking prosecute anyone. Arrests can go up, but if they're not charged with crimes because the woke DA doesn't think that people who are just committing petty theft out of crimes of poverty need to be charged, then none of it matters. In other words, New York libs, you're almost there, but not quite. Here to comment on that and so much more is Chef Andrew Gruel. He's now city council member in Huntington Beach, and our favorite Alex Stein, comedian, podcast host, provocateur, among many other things. Guys, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Andrew, I want to start with you here because you live in a state that is run by crazy people who often have these ideas of this is going to help this, and it never ends up working. Do you think that there's a push, now that there is a push to at the very least get these buttons installed in bodegas because people want to see the crime stop, do you think there will be a push to actually charge criminals in the city of New York as well as blue places around the country?
No, not at all. The reality is this is just another way in which they're saying, look, we're taking this problem seriously, but they're not. I'd like to know who's providing all of those panic buttons. Probably a friend of the person who wrote the policy. I mean, the other thing is that I still don't understand what they're going to do when we always avoid the most obvious solution to the problem, which is actually putting these people in jail. What I would suggest is that if you're going to have these panic buttons, or you're going to end up giving each bodega owner, $3,000, like, have a button that just blasts out some crazy music or like triple X rated, noise in the background, something to distract them. How are these panic buttons going to distract them from actually stealing products, stabbing people, the basic resume of kind of what they do?
Yeah, no, that's actually a pretty good point. The only problem is I would imagine that the people robbing the store might like the loud blasting music because they seem to be the ones who are blasting it in their apartments, keeping everybody awake anyways. Alex, so Andrew and I unfortunately live in the godforsaken hellhole that is California. You, on the other hand, live in a state that I think actually prosecutes crime. Do you notice a difference anywhere when you travel to these deep blue states in contrast to where you live?
Well, I'm in Dallas, and believe it or not, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin, they're all pretty blue. So, we still have our fair share of illegal immigrants and crazy crime. But when it comes to these buttons, unless this button, fires a gun back at the criminal, unless you press a button and it, shoots a bullet at somebody, it's not going to help, because the NYPD, it's a bunch of overweight women that you see some of these NYPD women. I mean, it's just a bunch of DEI women, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to women, but like the NYPD is a joke. And I talked to people that were, a part of this, that are retired, that are now in, legal, some of them are ex-NYPD, now they're attorneys. And they talk about how the NYPD has gone downhill. So you can press a button all you want. I don't really think you're going to have a great response time. And I think when they do respond, they're going to be too afraid to do anything, because that Alvin Bragg, when these people get arrested, they have bail reform. They get let out of jail. So it's not even worth this NYPD's time to do the paperwork to arrest these criminals when they know they're just going to be on the street, instantly.